What is a Good Samaritan, and how has psychology shown us that most of us are not Good Samaritans?
Oh shit.
Joseph, do you know what a Good Samaritan is?
Yeah, it's someone who sees someone that's in distress, and this is someone that they probably likely don't know, and it will come to their rescue more likely than not.
Yeah, that's a good summation. The Good Samaritan is a story from the Bible in which Jesus...
man, we're getting biblical in here.
We're getting biblical up in here. The Good Samaritan is a story from the Bible in which Jesus tells his disciples the story of a man who was robbed and left for dead on the side of the road. A priest and Levite walked by the man and chose not to help. A Samaritan, however, which is a person from Samaria, a region in ancient Israel. It's not just a person walking by something. I had no idea. I thought a Samaritan was just like a bystander. The Samaritan, however, provided aid to the man. Jesus instructed the disciples to act like a good Samaritan, to provide aid to others even if you don't get a reward for doing so, and even if they are of a different background than you. But as we'll learn from today's episode, most people are not good Samaritans. And when presented with a similar situation, most people will do what the priest and Levite did. Just walk on by. Welcome to Psych Papers, a podcast of bad content where we discuss controversial and interesting psychology studies and concepts. My name is Chris Cole. I have a PhD in psychology, and this is my co-host, Joseph Tajaran.
My name, I'm his friend, and this is not a Christian podcast. Just want to make that very clear.
In today's episode, we're covering the Good Samaritan Study, which showed that people in a rush are unlikely to help someone in distress, even if they're a seminary student on their way to give a talk about the Good Samaritan story. John Darley, our guy who conducted research on the bystander effect with Bib Latane, we did an episode on that. John Darley and Daniel Batson conducted the Good Samaritan Study in 1973. Did you know there are actually Good Samaritan laws in different states in the U.S.?
Yes. I think, is it like if you have if you're a doctor and someone needs medical attention, like you're legally have to like provide them help?
I found out that's similar. It's often grouped together. I think that's the duty to render aid. But the Good Samaritan law essentially protects medical personnel and anyone who attempts to provide aid from being sued. For example, if you're giving somebody CPR and you break one of their ribs, which happens often, you cannot be held liable for that. So Darley and Batson created the Good Samaritan Study, which tested the likelihood that participants would help a person in distress. The participants were seminary students who were studying to be ministers. This ends up being very important. And they were told that they'd be participating in a study on religious education and vocations. To test whether they'd help a person in distress, they needed to create a situation that looked and felt real to participants. It couldn't be perceived as part of the psychological study. The participant needed to encounter the victim, not in the experimental context, but on the road between various tasks.
Okay, hold on. So just to be clear, this is all technically all an experiment. Still.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, so this is...
Psychologist at it again.
But this time it's out of the lab. This is like real life now.
Yep.
Okay, I have so many questions, but go ahead.
Oh, it gets real quirky.
Yeah.
So participants first came to the lab, filled out a personality questionnaire, and then were asked to prepare a 3 to 5 minute talk on what it means to be a minister and what types of jobs can seminary experience be an asset for. Half the participants were told to prepare a general talk on this topic, but the other half of participants were explicitly told to incorporate elements of the Good Samaritan story into their talk. Remember, the Good Samaritan story is about stopping what you're doing to help those in need. After a few minutes, the experimenter came back and was like, you'll actually be giving your talk in another building across campus because there's not enough room in this building.
All right.
Now here's where it gets interesting. For a third of the participants, they were told, it'll be a few minutes before they're ready for you, but you might as well head on over. So no rush, take your time. For the next third of participants, they were told, The assistant is ready for you, so please go right over. Like, so you got to go now. So a little bit of a rush. For the final third of participants, they were told like, you're late. They were expecting you 5 minutes ago. You got to get moving. The assistant doesn't like waiting, so you need to hurry.
Okay.
So there's a big rush.
Yeah, so different modes of urgency. Low,
exactly.
Medium, and high.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now here is where the incident happens. They called it that in the paper. As participants were traveling from building 1 to building 2,
yeah.
every participant passed the victim. That's what they called it.
Okay.
Can you see where this is going?
I see. No, I saw this a while ago. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's even better hearing you say it.
Every participant passed the victim.
Uh-huh.
The victim was sitting slumped in a doorway, head down, eyes closed, not moving. As the participant went by, the victim coughed twice and groaned. They made it very clear that this guy needed help. Now, do the seminary students help? And also, side note, I have no idea how they would pick the guy to be the victim, because this is probably like a grad student or a research assistant, right?
You know, it'd be funny if it was actually one of the research assistants that took the study and then quickly changed into like a different outfit, then ran into the hallway and just like got into character right away.
Puts on a mustache and a wig. oh, I'm in pain.
Oh, woe is me. Hold on, before we go further, they had to plan this out so that way that they would guarantee pass this person, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So do the seminary students help? Would you help?
Of course I would. I'm a good person.
Of course.
I'm a good Samaritan. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what everyone says.
But research says otherwise.
You think you're a good person? Guess again.
All right. So let me guess that some people were not helping him. If not most of them, maybe.
Remember, half of them have just been writing a talk relating to the Good Samaritan, which is a parable about how people should stop and help those on sides of roads and in all contexts.
This is so on the nose. This is way too on the nose, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And remember, some students were in no rush, some were in a small rush, and some were in a big rush.
Right.
So who helped?
It's probably the people that were not in a rush were more likely to help, is my guess.
Yep. So that was one of the big findings. The other was that the seminary students that were either giving a talk on the Good Samaritan or giving a more general talk, this did not make a difference in the likelihood that they would help someone in need.
Oh, interesting.
So even somebody actively thinking about how virtuous it is to help others, it doesn't change the likelihood that they'll help.
Chris, would you say that these seminary students don't practice what they preach?
Ooh, Joseph.
Chris is fiercely striking through his notion doc. Fuck, he took my job!
I should have moved it up. I knew he was going to say that. The biggest finding was that researchers in the Good Samaritan study found that people in a rush were the least likely to offer help to someone in need compared to those not in a rush. Those in the no rush condition were the most likely to help. So if there was no rush, 63% of participants offered help.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad. If there was a small rush, 45% offered help.
Mm.
And in the big rush condition, only 10% offered help.
Wow, what a drop.
Yeah. Now, I ask you, Joseph, do you think these results would have been different in like a general population, not just seminary students?
I wouldn't be surprised if this is reflected close to real life, if not worse, with non-seminary students that are not going to do a talk about doing good for others. Hold on. Can we pause for a second? Seminary students who has someone like this John Darley guy has like a wicked sense of humor. You know, it'd be funny if we if we play this the fucking do the Samaritan. We test the Samaritan, but we pick some seminary students.
Yeah.
and we tell them that they have to do a talk about helping others.
Yeah.
That'd be such a good study. Who thinks of this shit?
I'm sure in the study design, like, oh, should we just sample like random undergrads? How can we make it funnier?
There's a fast and funny test.
Yeah. So you think that the general population would have been even less likely to help?
Yeah, I think maybe this. Yeah, I think they'll be less likely to help. That's my guess right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would probably say the same. I think they picked this sample because like these are seminary students are training to be religious leaders, which makes it more interesting and kind of funny. Their training is focused around ethical and moral teachings. It emphasizes the importance of serving others and encourages students to engage in acts of service and outreach. And through their faith, they try to develop their virtues and values, compassion, empathy, humility, and justice. Mm-hmm.
These are people that are in very directly involved in this space. Yeah.
Yeah. These are, I'm sure they picked them because like, if anybody is going to help, it should be these people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, either that or like you pick like social work students as well.
Oh,
people like in helping fields. Yeah, I would see that. Yeah,
and then do like business students.
Yeah, STEM students. Yeah, comp sci. See the difference.
and then I'm not sure if we're gonna keep this in, and then do like. And then do white woman students and just see how and see how many of them call the cops on the guy.
Yes,
he was harassing me.
We're keeping this right, don't worry.
To summarize the results, the authors stated, a person not in a hurry may stop and offer help to a person in distress. A person in a hurry is likely to keep going. Ironically, he is likely to keep going even if he is hurrying to speak on the parable of the Good Samaritan, thus inadvertently confirming the point of the parable. Joseph, they even state on several occasions, seminary students going to give the talk on the Good Samaritan literally stepped over the victim as they hurried on their way.
I can see that visual, yeah. Because he's in a doorway, right? Yeah.
Yep. Do you think they're bad people for not helping?
I wonder, yeah. I don't know if that makes you, I don't know if like... I don't know if a decision can denote you as a bad person, right? Which is a whole nother conversation, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think my guess is, and this is kind of summing up a lot of the studies we've done up to this point, I think people are just like self-interested most of the time. They try to do what's best for themselves. And yes, isn't like inherently selfish, but that doesn't mean it's bad, right? I assume these students that felt like they had a sense of urgency were very narrow-minded in their decision-making and prioritize doing that thing that they were told to do over anything else that would have obstructed them from that goal. So I don't think that makes them inherently bad people in this specific instance.
Okay, what about, because there were some people that were not in a rush and still didn't help. How about them?
No, those shitheads. Let me get started. let me say a thing or two about them.
Yeah, go off.
That's a more interesting question.
Because still only in the no rush, only 63% help.
3%? Yeah. That's still quite like 40-ish percent people didn't make a decision not to help. Yeah. No. I don't know. What do you make of that?
The researchers provided like a couple alternative explanations, and they were saying that because they were on their way to deliver a talk, they might have been distracted. They might have been like thinking about the talk too much. And by not helping, they're trying to help the people that they're giving the talk to. So they're trying to like balance two helping acts, one help the victim or one help the audience who is about to receive the talk.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to frame it, right? That's like a micro macro sort of thing. Like I'm giving this talk to influence others and help them make the right decision.
And then for the people in a rush, they have a little bit more of an excuse. They talk about how being in a rush, having like a high sense of urgency might actually kind of like tunnel your focus. to the point where maybe you don't even perceive that there's a victim or an emergency that needs help.
You're like not cognizant of it.
Yeah. You're not even
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah. I totally see that. Like when you're in a rush, I had a customer service rep tell me this. Look, I'm a very bad person when it comes to talking to a customer service rep over the phone regarding the internet, regarding any service that needs to be rendered. I lose my fucking temper every time I'm on those calls. They're like, "Oh, please hold," and they ask you, especially if
Mhm.
over the internet, have you reset your routers? Like, yes, I did. Why did you think I called you?
Hold on, let me transfer you to the correct department.
No! Stay on the call! Don't go! It was 20 minutes. I was on hold.
And then you get a new person, and they're like, "Hey, what's the problem?"
Yeah, you restate the entire thing. Like, why did they just summarize it before you sent me over? Yeah. So I get get very frustrated with those types of calls. I only bring that up because I had one like customer service tell me, because he could hear like my irritation in my voice. It's like, you know what? When we're angry, no, he didn't use the word angry, but it's like, hey, when we were in a rush, maybe sometimes we don't make like the best decisions. Maybe like, you're rushing towards it can make us feel a little bit more irritated. So there's no rush here. We can take our time. But the thing he was helping me through. Which I don't know if that pacified me, but like that definitely like stuck with me. The idea that if you are trying to rush through something, you do sort of get very ingrained in that thing.
You get like, tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny with customer service because when they transfer you to like 4 or 5 different people, you get steadily angrier and angrier
every time,
and you want to direct that anger at somebody. It's directed at the company, but all you have are representatives of the company. And when you're on the 4th person, they don't know what's going on. They just like picked up the call because it was like transferred to them.
Cold to you. Yeah.
But to the 4th person, now they're like dealing with like a hot customer, and they're like, "Oh shit, like I like didn't even do anything.
I'm sorry." I know.
And it's like, I'm sorry. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. I'm just mad, and you're the only like direction I can take this.
It's funny you imagine that. I say that every time on the call. I have to verbalize that because when I used to work the crisis line, we would have that some kind of whether helping someone through the suicide is kind of like customer service. And now you're getting someone who's very like wrapped up in their emotions, right? And so I empathize with people who have like a service kind of job. So I do verbalize that, like, I'm not angry at you. I'm frustrated at the situation. I apologize if I'm coming off a certain way. That's your therapy, my boy.
Yeah. Just giving you a quick warning, you're not going to get any pleasantries from me.
Going back to the study, I think that is an interesting thing. Going to Spike Lee's movie title, like Do the Right Thing. Because this episode is like a spiritual, like part 2 to the bystander, obviously. And it speaks to how like it is sort of hard to make a decision on whether to help people, especially because there's so many things that go into that, right? I don't want to complicate this further, but like if it's a person that looks more like you, I wouldn't doubt that you're more likely to help. Maybe like if someone looks like your mother or your brother, like but if someone looks so dissimilar to you or fits certain stereotypes, I wouldn't doubt that you'd be more hesitant to help them or feel more burned out. I remember a specific, all throughout my life, I've always like wanted to make the morally like what I thought was a good decision. But this instance when I was a kid stuck with me my entire life. I must have been like 5 or 6 or something, very young, and I was with my father at a mechanic, and we were waiting for his car to be like to be serviced, and a gentleman walks through the door. He was this older white gentleman, looked kind of like, he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and he was asking people for money. Now, mind you, I'm like 5 or 6 or whatever. I have $5. That's a lot of money for a kid.
Yeah.
I think someone had given that, like my uncle or something, and I was so ecstatic. And I remember at the time, everyone was sort of refusing to give him money. And then he went and asked around. And he didn't ask me because I'm a child, but I went up to him. I gave him the $5, and he was like so appreciative and grateful because he needed the money to get I think he wanted to get a bus fare back because his girlfriend kicked him out the house or something. So he just needed a bus fare to get back home. And so he left, And moments later, I see my father and I see him walking down with a plastic bag with a 6-pack of beer. And my dad's like, there's your $5 right there.
And he's like, Joseph, do you have the $5 I gave you for the bus fare back?
Walk home, buddy. You fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I've had other experiences like that as I got older in my life where like someone might have like feeling like fooled or whatever. But yeah, so like it's stuff like that. I only mentioned like stuff like that I could imagine can impact your future decision making, because now I'm a little bit more that, and the collective other experiences that I had after that make me more hesitant to like give out money, for example, as like a good gesture, especially when people seem like they want it or whatever. So I can see that being the case for other people as well. It's my whole point of bringing that up.
As you brought up, this relates to like the bystander effect, which posits that when there are more people around, any individual is less likely to step up and help during an emergency. And what the Good Samaritan study kind of shows is that even when we're by ourselves, we're not super likely to help others in need.
Anyway.
Unless we got the time. Unless we're not in a rush. Unless we're just moseying along. Yeah.
Yeah.
The frequently referenced idea that, quote, ethics becomes a luxury as the speed of our daily lives increases is at least accurate in this context. As we get busier and more kind of fast lives, ethics kind of moves to the passenger seat, and then it moves to the back seat, and then maybe it gets left at home sometimes.
Oof, another bummer episode.
Anyway.
Anyway.
This was a landmark study in a field in social psychology called prosocial behavior, which examines under what conditions do humans help each other. And that's like a whole field. We could probably do a whole episode on prosocial behavior.
Please,
but that will be for another time.
I'd love to see a string of episodes on this topic, because it is fascinating. Yeah.
If you're still watching or listening, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys.
We hope you don't get bummed out. We promise the next one will be a good one. Can't promise it's gonna. It'll be good, but I don't know if you won't be depressed as you might be about
most
society.
Psychology studies. Most psychology studies are just big bummers, dude. We need to do a whole nother podcast on like happy psych papers or something. Start a new channel
to the Bummer Cast. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Listening and watching. Bye.